And we welcome to the program now Congressman Michael Guest, represents Mississippi's 3rd Congressional District. Morning there, Congressman.
Good morning, Gerard. Great to talk to you today.
Yes, sir. So I assume you were in the gallery in attendance at the President's State of the Union address last Thursday.
That is correct. Was there and was extremely disappointed by the message that the president delivered. The president should use the State of the Union as an opportunity to address all Americans, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. But what I saw last week, Gerard, was nothing more than a political rally that the president held there on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. There was nothing there where he was reaching out to the other side. Matter of fact, throughout his entire address, he was very critical of Republicans and was even very critical of the Supreme Court, who was there in attendance that day, telling them that they got the overturning of Roe v. Wade wrong and that they should not have overturned Roe v. Wade. And so, again, when you think of the State of the Union, that should be a time when the president states what he wants to do, talks about his vision for the future, and should not have been used for a strictly partisan political purpose like we saw last week.
Honestly, I got to tell you, I've watched a number of them, and as I know you have as well, and of course attended many in person. It's kind of unprecedented. It really wasn't a State of the Union address as much as it was a campaign speech.
That's right. He was using that as the ability to kick off his campaign for re-election. Generally throughout the State of the Union, you will see times in which, regardless of who the president is, the minority party, in this case, the Republicans with a Democrat president, they would have found common ground, things that we could have reached out across the aisle and supported the president on. But we didn't see any of that. You look at the vision that the president laid out. He said, hey, we need more spending. We need more taxes. We need to codify abortion without any sort of restrictions, and that we're in favor of gun control.
Yeah.
And so those were the big takeaways that I got Thursday night. Never did the president talk about the things that he wanted to do and the way he wanted to work with Republicans. Instead, he chose to use that hour plus 10, 15 minutes to chastise people that don't agree with his vision of the country.
Yeah. Just really was amazing looking back on it. He just seemed so bitter, so angry, and just so cross. And essentially, he criticized half the country. He condemned them. You're supposed to be the president for everybody.
You're right. You talk about him coming across as angry. He comes across as that angry old guy who's yelling at the kids to get off of his lawn. I mean, he was there, throughout the entire speech. He came across as mad, came across as angry. It was clear that he had no intent to try to unite the country last Thursday night. His intent was to divide. His intent was to use this to be able to criticize the former president, and I think erroneously criticize President Trump, and then to try to make himself look good going into this next election cycle. And you're right when you say, we've never seen anything like this before. I've had the opportunity to attend several State of the Union, and never have I seen or participated in one that was as partisan as we saw last Thursday night.
Yeah, it's disappointing to say the least, but surprising a bit. I talked about it earlier in the program that the president was able to stimulate a good bit of donations to his campaign as a result of that speech. Do you think that's because he came across as at least somewhat appearing up for another term from a physical and cognitive perspective, that maybe his handler said go out there and yell a lot to show that you're really poised for another term?
I think the bar was set extremely low. The bar was basically, can you get through the speech without falling down, without making some major gaffe, major mistake there in the speech? And he was able to accomplish that. He was able to, for that hour, to be able to stand up, to read from the teleprompter, and at least appear that he had the ability to serve as a second term. Now, we know shortly after that, on Friday or Saturday this week, my days run together, the president was at a campaign rally, where at the campaign rally, the president said that he wanted and was asking people to send him back to Congress. And so clearly the lucid interval moment that he had Thursday night, all the prep work to get him ready for that did pay off in the fact that he was able to meet the expectations of being able to deliver a speech without any major gaffes. But we see just this weekend he's gone back to really the president that we know as a president that in many cases really doesn't know not only what day of the week it is, but doesn't know the office that he's actually running for. And for all Americans, that should be a very scary proposition, one, that he currently serves as our president, and two, that he's asking us to allow him to serve 4 more years as the president of the United States.
Yeah, it truly is. But certainly it looks like that the campaigns are ratcheting up. They're out there in earnest. Both candidates holding rallies over the weekend, delivering their message. I too saw that video actually of the current president asking the rally goers to send him back to the Senate, which was incredible. Within 36 hours after his State of the Union address. What did you think about his reference to the individual who murdered this young nursing student in Georgia as an illegal?
I agreed with that reference. I think now we're seeing that the president is having to apologize for that because the left is so outraged that he would use the term illegal alien. But truly, that is what these individuals are. And it is, and we see this, Gerard, particularly those on the left, they want to change the terms in which we refer to people who come across the country without authority. And we've referred to those individuals as illegal immigrants forever. And now, because that is apparently offensive to someone, now we have to now refer to them as undocumented individuals. And so it's funny to watch the president now go on his apology tour and having to apologize to people that he might have offended for using the term illegal immigrants. And he used it when he was talking about Lake and Raleigh being killed by an illegal immigrant.
Right.
At least the president did acknowledge that. And if you look at where the president talked about illegal immigration in his speech, he buried in the middle, which is where you want to put something that you really don't want to draw attention to. You want to start off strong, you want to end strong, and then you want to put those things in the middle that you really don't want to call attention to. And that's where the president chose to spend a little bit of time that he did on illegal immigration. And he never gave us a solution. He just continued to place blame on other people. He's previously placed blame on President Trump, on climate change. He appointed Kamala Harris to be his czar of the border, and she did a terrible job. Now he's wanting to blame Republicans because they were unable to get a bill in the Senate. And he said, hey, send us a bill. And I wanted to tell the president, we have sent you a bill, Mr. President, or at least we sent it to the Senate. We've passed H.R. 2, the toughest border security bill in modern history, and Chuck Schumer refuses to act on that bill in the Senate. So instead of chastising Republicans that we haven't done anything, maybe you should chastise Schumer in the fact that he refuses to bring H.R. 2 to the floor in the Senate.
Yeah, I totally agree. The president seems to be more focused on demeaning those who support the former president, Donald Trump. It's just, to me, just so improper for the commander-in-chief or the president of the United States to divide us that way. I just found that to be inappropriate, and it was so divisive in that perspective. If you can hang around with us, we'll talk a little bit more after the break, Congressman.
Sounds great. Thank you. I'll hold on.
Yep, we got Congressman Michael Guest calling in from Washington. Stay with us, folks. Back with you. We've got Congressman Michael Guest on the line talking to us. So, Congressman, can you remember ever a president scolding Supreme Court justices sitting right in front of him the way this president did Thursday night?
That has to be a first in history. I mean, the judicial branch is an equal and separate branch of government. And for the President of the United States to come in and scold them over an opinion that they authored, basically returning to the states the right to set restrictions on abortion, I think was not only a first, but I think it sets a very dangerous precedent. Joe Biden is not he's not the monarch of the United States. He's the president, and he has to answer to what the Supreme Court, the decisions that they hand down. And so I was very taken back, if you will, that the president would choose to do that in such a public manner, and with the justices sitting right there in front of him. And he was doing it on a decision that had been released almost a year ago. That decision became law last summer, and here we are in March of 2024, and the president is still angry about that. And again, whether he truly believes that, Gerard, or whether he was using that as a rallying cry for his base, it was wrong for the president to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, the other thing that struck me, Congressman, is he spoke for an hour, 10 minutes roughly. In the first 10 or 12 minutes, he spent really just trashing his likely general election opponent in former President Donald Trump. And the rest of that 10 or 12 minute opening was really focused on the abortion issue. And I just can remember and was really shocked with most of the Democrats and the females in attendance that were dressed in white, I think was some sort of symbol for support for what they would term as reproductive rights, and then stood with this rousing applause when he talked about essentially codifying the right to an abortion and restoring Roe v. Wade in the form of federal law.
You're exactly right. If you remember, Gerard, when Biden ran for president, he ran as someone who was going to unite the country, who was going to bring the right and the left, Republicans and Democrats together, that he was going to be a president for the entire country, not just a president for the left or the Democratic Party. But clearly that was not the message that he portrayed last Thursday night. He portrayed a very partisan president, again, someone who used the State of the Union as a political campaign kickoff. There was nothing in there where the president attempted to set forth any issues or projects that Republicans and Democrats could support. He was very critical of Israel in his State of the Union speech, was very surprised by that. It seems like the president, again, because it's an election year, originally was supportive of Israel in their war with Hamas and the terrorist group there in Gaza, but now because of a shift in public perception, the president now seems to be very much supportive of the Palestinians in that conflict. He offered nothing of hope for those people who disagreed with him politically. And if this is going to turn in, if the State of the Union is going to be nothing more than a political address, and if future presidents are going to use this as a way to politicize the State of the Union, there's really no reason to have it. The president can submit a written report. We can read his report. But to put the American public and members of Congress through an hour and a half long campaign speech, I think really goes completely against the grain of what we have come to expect from the State of the Union.
Yeah, so we got a spending measure passed, signed into law by the president, averting a shutdown. I think this essentially addresses about half of discretionary spending. We got another deadline coming up, in a couple of weeks, I believe. Is it the 22nd, I think? Is that the next one?
Yeah, next Friday. And so there are 12 spending bills that fund the government. We were able to pass 6 of those spending bills last week. As far as percentage-wise, those 6 bills fund about 30% of the government.
Yeah.
The other 6 bills fund roughly 70%. The big bill still out there that is defense, which is a big-ticket discretionary spending bill. As we speak, negotiators from the House and Senate are trying to work out some sort of compromise legislation that we can get to the floor. We hope to have bill text either sometime this week or possibly over the weekend. House rules require 72 hours for bill text to be available before legislation can be voted on. And so hope to have and kind of see where those negotiators, where they're able to land on these remaining 6 bills. There were some positive things in the 6 bills that we passed last week, cuts to some agencies, federal agencies that have become politicized, cuts particularly to EPA. There were measures in there that would prevent foreign governments, foreign corporations from purchasing large amounts of agriculture property. We were able to keep spending, at least in the 6 bills that we passed last week, either flat or just below their spending from the year before. I think that there was one of the 6 bills that had an increase, but that was offset by cuts in the other 5 bills. And so as far as trying to keep spending either flat or actually those 6 bills combined together, there was a slight decrease. Republicans were able to accomplish that, and we'll have to see when bill text is released the spending levels and the policy riders in the 6 remaining appropriations bills.
You know, you were kind enough to send me a summary, if you could call it that, and that's where I'm going, is that which essentially just highlighted the spending measures and what I think Republicans would say are some accomplishments. You just talked about that, stripping out some funding and politicized agencies such as the EPA and I think ATF, FBI, IRS, et cetera. But, Congressman, when I opened that document up, and I very much appreciate that, it's a 36-page summary. That just kind of illustrates, doesn't it, this Leviathan we've created in Washington.
When you have bills that are thousands of pages, and look, Republicans are equally to blame as Democrats. Republicans, when we took over the House, we said we're going to pass single spending bills. And that's not what leadership did in the spending bills that we passed last week. Instead of voting on 6 individual bills, and members having the opportunity to offer amendments to that legislation, they packaged all 6 of those bills together. No amendments were taken up, and you had to vote either all up or all down.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating because that's exactly what our leadership, Republican leadership, said that we weren't going to do.
Right.
We were going to get back to regular order. We were going to pass 12 individual spending bills. We weren't going to have an omnibus, or in this case, a minibus, and just divide those bills in half. But our leadership has been unable or unwilling to fulfill that promise. So very discouraging. Again, we had hoped that Republicans being in charge of the House, that we were going to be able to change the process, particularly the appropriations process. And at least in our first year, we've been unable to do so.
And so let's also keep in mind, Congressman, that we're halfway into the fiscal year, just hammering this out. So we're really essentially funding the fiscal year in the middle of the fiscal year, not in advance of it.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically funding 6 months of government spending. Since we were unable to get those bills passed in a timely fashion, leadership had to rely upon what's known as continuing resolutions.
Yep.
I think there were 4 continuing resolutions that were passed. I voted against all 4, if I'm not mistaken. So did Trent Kelly and Mike Ezell. I'm not a supporter of CRs. I've voted on a few that previously, when President Trump was in office, to give the administration some additional time, the Trump administration, to be able to hammer out some budget negotiations. But it is a terrible way for us to run the government.
Yeah.
And we're just continuing the budget policies that were put in place by Nancy Pelosi, and not only the budgetary figures, but the policy riders also that Nancy Pelosi stuck in.
We got to go.
Spending bill have been continued.
We got to go. Please keep working on that and get us back to regular order. I know you believe in that. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you, Gerard. Have a great day.
You too. Coming right back, folks. Half an hour left in the Element Wealth studio.